I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know, yeah. And I'd sing, hey, 'cause I know, yeah. And I'd sing, hey, 'cause I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be free. Yeah, yeah, I know how it feels. Yes, I know how it feels. How it feels to be free. No, no, no.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Between Me and Freedom. We're just starting off with a little music. Um, and what do you think, Ramon and Carla? Do we need a few more moments of tunes, or are we ready to keep going with our host? What do you think? What do you think? Call and response, people.
Ready.
All right.
I'm
So we
ready.
will pass it over to Norman.
Hi, hope I'm coming through loud and clear.
You are.
Good.
Yes.
I'd like to extend a welcome to everyone that's joining. Many of you know who I am, but I'll introduce myself for those that do not. I'm Norman Oberstein. I am the CEO and board chair of the Lens Foundation, which is co-hosting this with the Naropa University. And on behalf of myself and Liz Lewinson and Rob Francis, who compose the members of our board of directors, we want to really extend a big thank you to Naropa University and you wonderful faculty members who have staged this for the benefit of our network and their friends. There just isn't a topic that is more timely in our national conversation than the one that you will be addressing. We thought to organize this and stage it, not because we're hoping that our group will go out and save the world, which we do hope they do eventually, but rather to take a look reflectively on ourselves and our organization and step up and see how we can better meet this national moment. And with that, we hope that you get a lot out of this program. I do want to alert you to stay tuned to the very end because you will all get a preview of what we have in store as our national conference in June of 2022 at the Garrison Institute. And that program will be previewed along with the online run-up. We haven't been together with all of you for a long time. We were going to do it in June of 2021, But when COVID struck, we thought maybe that's too early to ask you to travel. So I think we correctly said we'll wait until 2022. And by that time, we hope the virus has been conquered by the vaccines and we all get a chance to be together personally. So with that, again, a huge thank you and shout out to Naropa. And I turn the program over to them and I'll shut off my audio and video.
So as we begin, kind of like to continue with what we just saw in terms of image and in terms of music, and really take a moment and invoke the lineage of liberation as it flows through Black people and as it flows through some of our movements in this country and in other parts of the world. So I'm gonna invite you all first to find your seat and bring your awareness to your seat. And go on up and feel into your belly and relaxing your belly. And turn your attention to that drum in the center of your chest. And relaxing your jaw. And even the space around your eyes. And coming into relationship with your uprightness, curved spine, and bringing relaxation into your shoulders. And finally, the breath. And now with breath and word, we want to speak the names of some of our ancestors and some of those living who are the current of this movement. So we're gonna call in spirit of Harriet Tubman.
Ashe.
We want to call in that spirit of guidance, that North Star, and that willingness and that courage to operate under dark and in dangerous conditions. And we want to call the spirit of Marcus Garvey. And that recognition that Black people around the world face a common struggle. And that struggle is a human struggle, common to all of us. Who else do we want to call in? Carla, who else do we want to call in?
I want to call in James Baldwin.
Let's call in Billie Holiday.
Yeah, we ask for the presence of that liberated voice. We ask for the presence of that critical intellect.
I want to call Bell Hooks. If you can send a little Black Buddhist love over here, we could use it today. So feel free to put into the chat or even unmute just for a moment or two if there are freedom fighters who you would like to be present with us this afternoon.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yes. Erykah Badu.
Bob Marley and Nina Simone.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Sam Cooke, Ella Baker, Octavia Butler, Frederick Douglass, Audre Lorde, twice.
Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams.
Yes.
Muhammad Ali.
Yes. We can have some Obama energy up in here. Both of them. Both of them. Nelson Mandela, Tina Camp, Toni Morrison. Ta-Nehisi Coates.
So as we call these names, you might imagine these people in back of you, having your back, with their hands on your
Rico.
shoulders. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, with their hands on your shoulders and with their strength energizing you.
And you might have ancestors in your lineage who are not Black. Freedom fighters are of all nationalities and ethnicities are welcome here.
Mhm.
I'll call Jesus. I have a little Jesus in the room.
Mhm.
Sunday.
Mhm.
We'll take another moment here. If there's, and you can call these people in silently, really into your heart space, into your spirit, into your mind space, to hold a container with us today that will liberate.
Dolores Huerta, Stephen Biko, Peace Pilgrim, Maya Angelou. All right.
Mm.
And we open and close many of our meetings at Naropa and many of our comings together with a bow. So we'd like to invite y'all to join us in the bow and we'll begin. And we'll bow, and as we bow, you go with us. Okay.
All right.
Welcome.
So, welcome. We are progressively, tentatively called the Black Liberation Triune out of Naropa University. And my name is Regina Smith. I identify in a lot of ways. I'm going to share a few of those with you. So I identify as Black. I identify as cisgender. I identify as a woman with a Y in the, yeah. I identify as temporarily able-bodied. I identify as middle class. I identify as a single mom of a 5-year-old raised by a single mom. I am a Christian Buddhist of kinds. And I identify as a US citizen. English is my first language. Of course, most of the identities I forgot are probably the places that I have the most power. And I will pass the microphone to one of my co-facilitators.
What's up, y'all? I'm Carla. I identify as Black. I identify as a cisgender woman. I identify as a US citizen, temporarily able-bodied. I identify as a person whose father is up in the heavens right now. And many other identities as well. I identify as a person who is called to the teachings and lineage of liberation. And I will pass the mic to Ramon.
Good morning, everyone, or whatever time zone you're in. My name is Ramon Gabriel Parrish. I identify as Black or as a child of the African diaspora. I identify as cis male, father, husband, temporarily able-bodied. I live in Colorado, and I identify as a seeker, as somebody who's curious about liberation and wisdom from many angles. And I identify as a child of the earth and of the cosmos. It's good to be here.
Yes.
And so I'm going to share my screen for a moment. What I'm going to share with you, you may be familiar with. It's called an identity wheel. And it just gives you a way to orient to how you identify. So, and Buddy, you can upload it into the chat. So Buddy will upload some documents into the chat that you can then download onto whatever device you're on and save for your own study. Um, so one moment. So you'll see here the identity wheel, and it's a mindfulness practice where you can go around the wheel and just think about how you identify. So some personality traits might be in the middle of the wheel, how you identify racially, how you identify in terms of your mental ability, your mental health, your sexual identity. And all of these ways that you identify come with power. So either life has been made easier for you because you have culturally conferred power according to the group that you belong to, or barriers and obstacles and systems of oppression have been placed in your way. They stand between you and freedom, or they were erected, created to stand between you and freedom. And so it's important that you periodically review the identities that you hold and the privileges and the ease of access that you are afforded because of those identities, or the resilience that you have developed because of those identities and the need to navigate barriers and obstacles. So this is the identity wheel. And then, which has now been uploaded into the chat. And the next thing that you can do once, and we're not going to do this all together as a group, I'm just orienting you toward these tools. Once you have looked at how you identify, you can then think of places where you have power and places that you've been, barriers have been placed. And so we have what's called, from Dr. Barstow, who's on the call right now, from Dr. Barstow's work, we have the positional chart. Which is another tool that helps you look at where you hold power. And let me see if I can share that with you, but it should be uploaded into the chat momentarily. 1 second. Here we go. This looks like, so it'll look a little bit like this. So you can see that positional power or roles that you hold so those are like jobs. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a therapist, if you're a spiritual leader, if you're the CEO of an organization, those are places you have up positional power. And on the right side of the chart are the identities that we were just looking at. So groups that you belong to that have increased power or barriers to power. So in our culture, groups that have what we call up status power are, and what we'll be focusing on some today, white folks are in up status, cisgender folks are up status, males are up status, if you're able-bodied, you're up status. So places that our culture has granted folks power that they did not earn simply by the memberships, the groups that they were born into. So we're offering you these tools for you to reflect on, because the identity that you hold shapes the way that you experience reality. It shapes how you experience teachings that we're going to offer. It shapes the way that you see the world. It's basically the lenses that you see the world through. And so our identities change things. There is alchemy that happens based on who we are and what we encounter. And that is the exploration that we're going to be into today. So you're welcome to share in the chat how you identify so that y'all can be having your own conversations as we continue to progress through our plan for today. But we wanted to give you some tools to look at yourself through and ask yourself, how is your identity informing your experience of this very moment? How is your identity informing what you're expecting us to present today? How is your identity going to inform the experience that you have of the three of us facilitating these conversations? All of that is shaped by your lived experience. All right, and your tools have been uploaded into the chat. So Ramon, if you want to say a few things about the how of Black spin on our experience today.
Sure. So, we're gonna tell you all a story, and we're gonna tell you a story that many of you have heard before. We're gonna tell a story of the Buddha's enlightenment, the moment where he kind of made the breakthrough. And we're gonna tell the story. There are many versions of the story, but we're gonna tell it in an oral tradition manner, right? We're gonna tell it like in live space, and we're going to tell it in terms of our own life experiences and some of the challenges that we face and some of the challenges that are out there collectively, and we're going to try to bring the story into a present moment, right? And like this is a way, right, amongst Black people in the United States and really throughout the world. It's a way of like bringing things into the present by speaking them and speaking things into reality, right? Some people talk about literature, and there are some scholars, Afrocentric scholars, who talk about orature, and that in Black cultures, the principal way that transmission happens is orally. It's through the mouth, and it's through the living word rather than the printed word on the page. And so the way that we're going to do it, though, there might be elements in it that, there could be Black elements in it that you might be like, well, what is it? And we just invite you all to be open and to notice where your own social locations might resonate with how we tell it, and maybe create some static. So with that, I pass the mic to Carla Mueller.
Thank you, Ramon. All right, so let's get into this. Y'all ready to hear some story about the Buddha? Yeah, okay. All right then. Well, listen up. So here's what I've heard about the Buddha. All right. First of all, Buddha is a spiritual name. It means awakened. So the Buddha, formerly known as Siddhartha, became enlightened after he went to a Burning Man festival. No, I'm just playing, just kidding. He became enlightened after he sat under a tree. Is that what some of what y'all have heard? Have you heard that story about the Buddha? Yeah.
That's what I had.
All right. So the man Siddhartha, he was born a while ago, in around 483 BCE. In a southern region of Nepal, which at the time was not called Nepal, just for your information. But that's about the region, the territory that we're talking about. And he, in his family had a lot of status. They had a lot of power. He came from the Sakya family, and his dad was a chief, and he maintained a lot of the region of where Siddhartha was from. So yeah, we're just talking a lot of privilege, a lot of power.
Mad bling.
Mad bling. So we can say that in a lot of ways, Siddhartha, he had it all, right? He had the privilege, he had the power, he had the status. However, I have heard that his mom died when he was really little, when he was only 7 days old. And I also heard that when she died, she went up into this heavenly place. And I imagine that somehow her death most definitely impacted his quest for liberation, his quest for going into searching the unknown, into these invisible places. I imagine that she kept him safe and protected on this journey. So right now, I just want to give some respects to Siddhartha's mother and to all mothers, because without our mothers, there could be no Buddhas.
Word.
So we give mad respect to our mothers. So again, except for this fact of not having his mother, the Buddha he had it all. He had land, he had delicious organic food, he had the finest education, he had unlimited yoga passes, he had massages every day, he had the best healthcare, he had a hot tub, he had a beautiful, he had a hot tub. He had a beautiful wife. He was popping champagne bottles every night. He had it all. Have you heard about this? Have you heard
I
about
heard.
the
That's what I
heard about
heard.
Siddhartha's parties? So you get the picture. But even with all that champagne and all that hot tubbing and all the women and everything at his beck and call, he was still feeling pretty dissatisfied. And this dissatisfaction, the older he got, the louder and louder and louder that it grew. And it just didn't stop. And so finally one day, Siddhartha decided that he needed to get out the house. He needed to get out of that palace and he needed to see some things. And so once he got out, he went out into the city, he went into town, and he came across some really messed up stuff. I heard that he was out there in the middle of the city in the hustle and bustle of it all. And he looked over and he saw a man who was sick and he was dying and he was just kind of laying on the side of the street. And there are
So
people.
he stumbled into the hood.
Yeah, basically he stumbled into the hood. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And people were just all around walking, just on their merry way, paying no attention to the fact that this guy was dying in the streets. And Buddha was like, what? We're just gonna let this guy rot and die here on the streets and just go on about our merry way? And Siddhartha was like, oh, hell no, this is wrong. And that really etched something in his heart. And the dissatisfaction grew with him. He went home, but now the dissatisfaction, it was turning into all kinds of things. It may be shock, rage, desperation, despair, sadness, whatever it was that was stirring up in him. It was full blown to the point where he was like, I got to get up out of here and I got to go find the truth. I got to go see what's up. I got to go figure out what's real and what all this sickness and death and people not caring about each other. What is all of this about? So when he left, though, he left behind, in some ways, he left behind a lot. He left behind his title. He was leaving behind his power. He was leaving behind the food, the hot tub, parties, his wife. And guess what? He had also just had a child, a newly born child. So he was leaving behind his child too. And so can you imagine what the conversation might have looked like between him and his wife when he was going out to find the world, leaving her and her child behind?
You doing what? Where you think you're going?
Exactly.
There's just this thing. I just can't keep my mind off this.
You ain't no good. That's what they told me before I met you. You're just gonna leave me here with this kid?
Oh God.
Oh, so it's like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that. So at this point, the Buddha was 29 and he was not feeling so fine. And so he set out for what would be a 6-year journey. So he leaves the lap of luxury and he sets out to go wander the streets of the hood, so to speak. So he's out there on the streets, wandering around, asking for food, asking for clothing. I even heard that he was pulling rags off of dead bodies in order to clothe himself. Did you hear that?
That's just nasty.
Yeah. He was doing it though. He was doing it. So eventually out there, he met up with some guys who said that they knew how to transcend the body. And they taught him how to do this through achieving states of bliss. Ooh, sounds pretty trippy. Anyway, the Buddha learned how to achieve these states of bliss very well. He was able to bliss out on a dime, so I've heard. But yet he still realized that going into these bliss states was kind of bogus because he'd feel good for a little while, but then eventually he'd always come down. And once he did,
that
he was
sounds
right back
familiar.
in the middle.
That sounds familiar.
He was right back in the middle of a messed up world. And sickness still existed, and pain and death was just as vital as ever. And the Buddha was like, damn, this isn't it. So he set out again on his way. He left that crew and went out on alone. And on his way out there, he gathered an entourage of these other 5 wanderers who were out there. I don't know if y'all have heard about them. Seems like they were some pretty cool cats. And they gathered together and they wandered and they rapped about life and spirituality and what their past bliss experiences had been. They compared stories and they wondered how they might reach liberation. And after many deep conversations, I'm sure there was a fire involved, they decided that it was the body that was the problem. It was the body that was in between them and freedom. So they stopped themselves from indulging in any bodily needs or desires, including food. And as they practiced with this, it turned out that the Buddha, he was the best. And the others began to look at him like he was the teacher. He was the one who was mastering a life of starvation and who would lead them into liberation by denying the body of food. All of this with the hopes of freeing his mind, of course. But time kept on ticking, tick, tick, tick. And all that was happening was that he was getting more and more skinny, more and more emaciated, not liberated. And he grew weaker. And he started to really come to terms with this. The weaker he got, he was like, maybe this isn't the way, actually. So this particular day where he was starting to feel confused about what he was doing, he dragged his bony body to a nearby tree and he laid under it for a while and he rested there. And maybe he was laying there thinking about what the hell he was doing with his life. I don't know. But lucky for him, a young woman named Sujata saw him off in the distance and she mistook his emaciated body for a tree spirit. So I don't know if he looked like he was so bony that he looked like a pile of sticks or what was going on, but she thought that he was a tree spirit. And she fortunately had just made a delicious meal of rice and milk. And she wanted to go offer this to the tree spirit. So she rolled up, she was happy along her way, going to talk to this tree spirit and offer this milk and rice. And she gets up there and lo and behold, she's like, whoa, this is a human being. My goodness, you need some food. Let me feed you. Lucky
That
for
sounds
the
familiar.
Buddha. Yeah, yes it does.
Sounds like
And
somebody's
lucky
mama.
for the Buddha. Yeah. Lucky for the Buddha, he accepted the gifts from this woman. Familiar story. And he ate and he nourished his body. And after a while, through the nourishment of his body, he was able to sit up. He was no longer weak. He was able to sit up. And he began to have some real talk with himself, right? And maybe his real talk started out something like, wow, Siddhartha, my friend, maybe you need to have some balance in your life. I think that's where it first started. And then he started to have memories of being a kid and how much he loved the trees and how much he had sat under trees and how supportive that they were and how they supported his body and how they gave him shade from the sun. So he really started to accept his body maybe as part of this whole liberation story, that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to deprive it. And from there, I heard that he sat for some days and some days, and all of his past lives came to him, right? All of the causes, all the conditions, all the things that he'd done in every life. Maybe his mother came to him, maybe his child, maybe the sickly, dying person on the street came to him. Who knows what happened, but many things, many beings came to him. And they fostered this notion of compassion and this feeling, this quality of liberation for himself and for all beings. And just as true liberation was dawning, just as soon as he began to taste freedom, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure approaching a figure known as Mara, the seducer.
Now the old legend says the Buddha was sitting with his back to a tree. It says he was sitting in the woods or maybe in a park next to the city. And I think he could have been by a tree, but he could have just been sitting on the curb. He could have been sitting at the bus stop. He could have been sitting at his porch. He could have been in a rocking chair. He could have just been sitting on the ground. He could have been anywhere. But it was really the quality of his sitting. It was really the fact that he was good. He was good right there, with not much. He wasn't starving himself anymore. That was out of control. That was crazy. His mom taught him better than that. And he wasn't all lavished up in the palace. He hadn't put cotton and wool over his eyes to protect him from seeing what was actually happening. But he was good. He was seated. And he was grounded into his resolve. Right? And so this Mara shows up. And some of the old tales say that Mara had a bow, and the string of the bow was made out of bees, and that the bow itself had a flower on there, and he shot that flower at him, right? Like he came as like a god of love. That's one way it could happen. Could have happened that somebody pulled up in a limousine or a Beamer or whatever. I don't even know what the names of those nice cars are that everybody desires so much. It could have been somebody that walked up in a nice suit. It could have been a billboard across the street. You know what I mean? Showing him, I don't know, fashion, Victoria's Secret, cigarettes, whatever. It could have been a liquor store. It could have been the nice houses of people on the hills. Okay? It could have been somebody jonesing on the street. It could have been prescription drugs. Could have been all kinds of things. But so as the arrow was approaching the Buddha, all these things start flashing through his mind. All this stuff start flashing through his mind. What do you want? No, what do you really want? You can have anything you want. If you could have anything you want. And as the arrow approached him, he could hear Mara's voice. Yeah, I know that you're about to reach enlightenment and you're good there. You're good just sitting there. But surely you wanna get up and just taste a little bit of that good life again. A little of the green, a little of the bling, a little of the chain, a little of the show off. Surely you want just a little bit of that. And if you could just tone down your message, just tone it down. I mean, we love you here. It's great. It's great having you here, Buddha.
I hear you.
It's great. We need you in the room. It's important, Buddha. We love your music, Buddha. It gets really political at some points. And, it'd be great if you could just tone it down a little bit. You're really passionate. We love the passion. If you could just bring it down just a little bit. I mean, it's making people uncomfortable. Don't you want to feel nice? I want to feel nice. All right, so it's just, and as the arrow approached, maybe he thought about his lavish palace. Maybe he thought about his 4 cars. Maybe he thought about his extra vacations. Maybe he thought about his trust fund. Maybe just thought he didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Just be nice to just snuggle in bed. And then Mara even threw his daughters. He even threw his daughters up in front of him. You know, don't you want to be beautiful? Don't you want beauty? Don't you want to straighten your hair? Don't you want light skin? Whatever. Threw it all at him. And here was the Buddha. You know, he was dressed down at this point. And maybe it's even harder once you've already had all these things. And still he sat under his tree, right at his bus stop, on the corner. And right as that arrow came to him, it just dropped. But it was like, actually, I'm good. And I gotta do what I gotta do. And I gotta say what I gotta say. But Mara wasn't out of tricks. Was he, Carla?
Nope. Nope. As the Buddha sat, suddenly another figure came walking up. The Mara of aggression. Yep, I see it. Yep, I got it. Yep, I see. Yeah, I'm on it. Okay, back. Okay, all right. Bye, I got this. Oh, hi. Hi there, excuse me. Hi, you sitting there. Yeah, as you can see, I just got a call about some strange activities happening over here under this tree. Maybe some trespassing. Not sure. Hello? Hello?
You loitering?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. And the Buddha just sat. Oh, I see what's going on here. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, you think you're reaching enlightenment. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, okay. Well, okay, so you do know that it takes money to fill out the permit request to reach enlightenment here on this property. You do know that, right? Oh, yeah. And like, come to think of it, as I look at you, do you even know what the 7 points of meditation posture are? You might want to brush up on that. And your hair. It's looking kind of wild for enlightenment, don't you think? Yeah. Still quiet. Still not saying anything. Okay, all right. Okay, still sitting. Okay, you know what? I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to ask you to just go ahead and leave that seat. Just go ahead and push you aside here. There's actually others who've gone through the formalized enlightenment process. They've done all their paperwork correctly. We have them on file. So if you can just go ahead and scoot on out, that would be great because you're taking up their seat. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Could you speak up? I'm not able to hear you at all. I mean, I guess you're not really from around here, are you? Huh? Okay. All right. Yeah. Back of the line for you, mister. Just go ahead. Just go on.
Are we talking about Black Lives?
Yeah. I feel for you. I really do. Okay. So you're not moving. So I just want you to know that I now have all of these concerned citizens with me here, and we've called the law enforcement and they're on their way. So you're just gonna have to leave or face the consequences of the situation, because under the law, we do have the right to use force.
I'm sorry, I'm out of here. Goodbye, I wish you.
And the new formed mob of aggressive Maras came through, and still the Buddha sat unfettered. And the immovability of the Buddha created a force field all around him that no weapon, rule, or criticism could penetrate. Unfueled by any reaction, the Maras grew smaller and smaller and smaller and began to melt into the earth. And once the Maras of aggression had melted into the earth, the Mara of all Maras was enraged and ascended down upon Siddhartha.
You know that I should be in your place, right? You know that I have so many people who can speak to my credentials for being enlightened. You, Siddhartha, are not qualified to be enlightened. You are not ready for this. I mean, who do you think you are? You know why you're here, right? It's because you're Black, right? I mean, you don't think you're special, do you? You know, you're not even qualified to do this, don't you? Do you even know what you're doing? Do you, do you know how hard I had to work to get here? Don't you think it's a little unfair that you're sitting there and I'm not? Don't you think you're taking this a bit far? Do you really think they'll listen to you? Do you even speak their language? Are you sure you have what it takes? Who do you think you are? How many can you make? How fast can you make it? Will it be done by the end of the day? Can you do it with less? Can you do it for less? Can you do it with a smile? Why are you smiling? Why are you walking like that? Why do you talk like that? Why do you talk so much? Will you hurry up? Who do you think you are? Can you say it in a different way? Can you say it with more feeling? Will you just calm down? Can't you take a joke? What's the matter with you? Is it really that big of a deal? When are you going to get over it? Do you even know anyone here? Does anyone even know your name? Is anyone here going to stand up for you? Does anyone here really have your back? Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Are you just going to sit there? Who do you think you are? So the Buddha sounded a little bit like Nikki Giovanni, a Black poet and activist. When the Buddha responded, it sounded a little bit like Nikki Giovanni's poem, Ego Trippin'. I was born in the Congo. I walked to the Fertile Crescent and built the Sphinx. I designed a pyramid so tough that a star that only glows every 100 years falls into the center, giving divine perfect light. I am bad. I sat on the throne drinking nectar with Allah. I got hot and sent an ice age to Europe to cool my thirst. My oldest daughter is Nefertiti. The tears from my birth pains created the Nile. I am a beautiful woman. That's right, the Buddha was a beautiful woman. I gazed on the forest and burned out the Sahara Desert. With a packet of goat's meat and a change of clothes, I crossed it in 2 hours. I am a gazelle so swift, you can't catch me. For a birthday present when he was 3, I gave my son Hannibal an elephant, and he gave me Rome for Mother's Day. My strength flows on. My son Noah built New Ark, and I stood proudly at the helm. As we sailed on a soft summer day, I turned myself into myself and was Jesus. Men intone my loving name. All praises, I am the one who would save. I sewed diamonds in my backyard. My bowels deliver uranium. The filings from my fingernails are semi-precious jewels. On a trip north, I caught a cold and blew my nose, giving oil to the Arab world. I am so hip, even my errors are correct. I sailed west to reach east and had to round off the earth as I went. The hair from my head thinned and gold was laid across 3 continents. I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. I cannot be comprehended except by my permission. I mean, I can fly like a bird in the sky. And then the Buddha touched the earth.
Buddha touched earth.
And now we're going to go on a 10-minute break. And we want, oh, sorry, it's a 5-minute break. It's a 5-minute bio break. And we want you to ask yourself what's between you and freedom. And that's it. See you in 5. Like a tree.
Planted by the water. You know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. You know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I'm just like a tree planted by the water. You know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I started with Jesus was a long time ago. I promised him that I'd follow wherever he may go. I'm glad he loved me, and I love him so. You know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. Yes, you know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Yeah, I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I'm just like a tree planted by the water. You know that I shall not be moved. Shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. You may say, boy, those songs are old, and you need new songs to sing. But my songs are as old as God. I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear for the whole round world to hear.
Coming back, coming back. So yeah, there's some work happening in the chat. So let's work it out, people. Work it out. It's exciting to be confused and disoriented in what's happening and how we're doing what we're doing and the process and the content. And if I could be multiple people, I'd be conversing in the chat and facilitating as well, but I can't. So I'm going to leave it to all of you who have been doing this work for a while to help folks along. So we're going to spend just a moment looking at some of you may be aware, like over the summer, there was a lot of recirculating of some work from Dismantling Racism around white supremacy culture. And I'm going to share a little bit about looking at those characteristics of white supremacy culture through the lens of the three poisons. And here we go.
Can I jump in there real quick, Regina?
Please do.
Okay, so just want to, I think oftentimes we are used to thinking, and maybe I should put we in quotations, we are used to thinking about the three poisons as individual and as psychological exclusively. And there are writers out there like David Lloyd who talk about the three poisons as collective and as institutional and as behaviors and systems that we fall under the sway of, And in terms of like looking at this story from like a Black liberationist perspective, part of what we're focusing on is how these things get played out on a collective level and how they become enshrined, how the three poisons become enshrined in our organizations and in our ways of working in terms of the dominant paradigm. So anyway, just parentheses, back over to Regina.
Parentheses, not a parentheses, central. So we're not going to spend a lot of time here, and this is intentional. We could spend the whole time talking about white supremacy, but what that does is reify white supremacy. So instead, we've chosen to talk about what it's like to live and experience and be, and to recenter Blackness through our own voices, through our own stories, through what's important to us. And if more organizations and spaces would shift the focus from kind of combating white supremacy to centering other ways of being, knowing, and feeling, we would be doing the work in multiple ways, which is part of having an Afrocentric lens. So that said, let me share this. All right, so the poisons of supremacy. Like I said, this is from the Dismantling Racism workbook, and work that has been going on, as you can see, since 2001, and that's, even before then, with Kenneth Jones and Tema Okun. So passion. So quantity over quality is one of the ways that white supremacist culture is in our organizations. So a focus on things that can be measured and quantified, and that the product is more important than the process, and that the end always justifies the means. Urgency. There's a reason we didn't start at 12 o'clock on the dot today. Because there needs to be time. time to be inclusive, time to be thoughtful in our decision making, time to think about long-term consequences rather than always in a rush, always on the dot, always squeezing relationship into the increments. And that results are more important than relationships in an urgent culture. We don't have time to build relationship. Aggression. So perfectionism is a part of white supremacist culture where work is not, we usually take a very critical lens to work. We don't have typically cultures of appreciation and acknowledgement. No matter what you do, it's not enough or you're not doing it right. That feedback gets to you because so-and-so told so-and-so told so-and-so who told you rather than someone investing in your relationship by giving you feedback. It's not okay to make mistakes because we don't put in the time that we need to learn from our mistakes. So perfectionism. Defensiveness. That criticism of those in power is viewed as threatening or inappropriate. So you're rude if you criticize those who are in up power. That instead of being innovative when new or challenging ideas are brought to our organizations, we become defensive. That we invest energy in protecting the feelings of those who have the most power rather than an honest dialogue. And that the feeling of those in power and protecting those feelings and the defensiveness they feel when they're criticized is what creates an oppressive culture. Fear of conflict. People in power are scared of conflict and avoid it. We don't have conflict positive cultures where we can benefit from conflict because whenever there is difference, there will be conflict. The person who raises uncomfortable issues is the problem rather than looking at the actual problem. And we're more concerned with being polite and saying things nicely than we are with actually having, like I said, honest dialogue. And ignorance. So dualistic thinking, and I think this is part of, again, a little bit of the conversation in the chat right now, is that there's only one right way to do things, that things are either or, good or bad, right or wrong, rather than there's a both and. There are many different ways to have this conversation, and all of them are necessary. There's this idea that if people knew the right way, which is our way, that they would do it the right way. And when they don't do it our way, then something is wrong, rather than there's just a multiplicity of ways and entry points, and different things are going to meet different people's needs. And all of it is necessary to get us where we're trying to go, which is collective liberation. Individualism. So the idea that we have to do things on our own in organizations, that we have to there's cultures of scarcity and isolation, that we are out for recognition and credit. And we don't actually put time and energy into learning to work in different ways that are more cooperative. And accountability is hierarchical. So only our supervisors can hold us accountable rather than we're all holding each other accountable. So here's a few reflection prompts. And I believe there's a handout, Buddy, that can be uploaded into the chat. And if you don't have it, I can do it. So we want you to take just a moment, literally, like, hopefully the handout is to tag you for future reflection that you can do on your own. But we want you to choose one aspect of white supremacy culture and look at how it has personally harmed you. So the need to be perfect has been harmful, or urgency has been harmful, or an emphasis on individualism has been harmful. And so write about that. And then, or choose an aspect of white supremacist culture that you actually have been complicit in perpetuating. So do you acknowledge your coworkers or people that report to you and their work? Is it okay for people around you to make mistakes? How do you respond when someone's late to a meeting? So those are aspects of white supremacist culture that you can look at. Similarly, on an organizational level, you can look at how this shows up in your organization and a practice that your organization could implement to disrupt that. So I'm gonna leave it on the organizational page for a minute. And yeah, we're gonna give you about 5 minutes to just write down some initial thoughts. Again, perfectionism, don't need to do that. Urgency, don't need to do that. Just what's on the top of your mind and heart that was stirred in you. Passion, aggression, ignorance. And what are you going to do further reflection on in terms of your personal relationship to these white supremacist ways of being and your organizational relationship to these white supremacist ways of being? I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can get the handout into the chat if it's not already there, and just give you some moments to reflect. In answer to the question, there's a full article on how these aspects are part of dominant culture, white supremacist ways of operating. So we're just referencing that seminal work. And the reason culture exists is because it's perpetuated by those who have power. So going back to the very beginning of our presentation, groups that have power set the norms of how we operate within the organizations that we're in. So all of our culture is white supremacist. And we're using that language as, ways in which it centers whiteness and ways in which it centers the institutions that perpetuate that. I'm going to try to find the handout to make sure I can upload it and be quiet just for a moment or two.
I got it in there.
Yeah, so the link will show you more about that. And also, the handout has the reflection questions on it. And that's also. And I believe the handout actually has the citation that you're looking for. So we'll take another moment or two, literal 2 minutes, if you want to write and reflect on aspects of culture, how they show up in your life, how you've been harmed by them, how you perpetuate them, or if you'd rather take an organizational perspective, thinking about the organizations you work in and how these aspects of culture are showing up. And what could you do, or what could your organization do to disrupt these ways of being? Carla, whenever you're ready.
All right, yeah, so we just encourage you to, again, do some of this work on your own that we presented. There's a lot here. Please continue to write and contemplate and be with this and research and read, all of those things. So as we've been talking about this notion of white supremacy, it's kind of in the way that, in some ways, for me, how I view it is that kind of Maha Mara that impacts all of us. It's something that keeps all of us from liberation, keeps all of us from freedom. And as we were also experiencing through our new rendition story, our lived experience of the story of the Buddha, liberation was something that happened through and with his body. And along the way, he realized that he couldn't deny his body and still experience freedom. So under this sacred tree, the Buddha had to reclaim the right for his heart, body, and mind to be free. When he faced these maras, he had to claim the divine right. And as we were learning, white supremacy in some of these aspects would actually have us deny our bodies and our minds as a means to control individual and collective bodies and to starve us from any substance that would lead us to freedom. So white supremacy has falsely claimed parts and pieces of us, right? So right now we're going to do a little work with that reclaiming and just feeling what these manifestations are within the body. So you've done a little work on the PowerPoint, and maybe there was something that really resonated with you in one of these aspects of the poisons. So just feel right now within the body, and you're welcome to turn off your camera. You're going to be doing a little bit of body work. Just feel the places inside of you that are oppressed or maybe that have been falsely claimed by white supremacy. So for example, how does the insistence on perfection shape the body right now? So you can go into that shape. Or perhaps you're working with temptation or self-aggression or being forced into, boxed into a way of being and thinking. Or maybe you just don't feel like you have the right to speak or take up space. So whatever that is, feel the contraction, feel the texture, the weight of it, or the squeeze. And just notice through the body how that impacts your ability to experience a sense of freedom. So really go into that posture right now. I'm inviting you to use the body, goods. So just notice that, feel that. A lot of times we're often feeling it. So in some ways it can feel good to just exaggerate that quality. Just get into that contracted feeling. Notice, what impact does this actually have on my being, my state of mind, when I take this shape, or I feel that I'm forced to take this kind of shape energetically? How does that sculpt me? Okay, and now just come back to some sort of neutral, whatever that is for you. And now just move into a posture that feels like liberation from these energies, these forces, these mindsets, these collective agreements. So let your body move in that way. So in this, it could be, these could be bold expressions, but they might not, right? Like we're working with this is we're encountering liberation. It might just be that we're sitting up, or that we just have a smile, a slight smile, or there's a wink, or we're just breathing, right? We're not holding our breath anymore. So whatever liberation, this freedom quality feels like for you in the body, just allow yourself to have that right now. You just feel into that. And we're just going to take the next few moments and we're going to come back into that more closed, contracted feeling, and we're going to move our way through the journey from that feeling into the journey of that liberated state that you've just come into. And again, it could be big, it could just be that you're sitting upright. So we're going to take about 3 minutes. So find, again, that more closed way, that closed posturing of being. And it might just be an internal closing down, right? It might just be that your organs feel really tight, right? Maybe your sphincter is just tight, or your heart is, there's whatever that is for you. Just feel the tightness and the restriction. And we're just going to start on a 3-minute journey on our way to that liberated posture. So I'm timing, and I'll let you know when you're about halfway to the journey of liberation. So just really allow yourself to have the unfolding of coming out of this oppressive posture and what that might feel like every step along the way. Just noticing the details as you move from tension and constriction. So again, we've just started out on our journey, and liberation, you might not see it yet, even in sight. Just being with the moment by moment movement. Staying with yourself. So in about 10 seconds, you'll be hitting that halfway mark from tension to freedom, the halfway mark between you and freedom, right? So now we're there, we're halfway. So now this liberated posture is somewhat in sight. It's not quite there, you're still making your way there, still noting your process along the way, what it is for you personally to get to this new stance, this new way of being from where you were. Honoring from where you came. This isn't about that the constriction was bad, but that is what happened and that there is a way out of it. So you're just reaching the last 30 seconds to that final posture of liberation for you. Really savoring these last moments of coming into this final posture. 5 seconds, the liberation in the body. And just stay and notice and feel, savor this quality. On the out breath, just come back to neutral, let it dissolve, shake it off, drop the whole thing. Feel the earth underneath you, come back to your seat. And when you come back to the seat, come to your seat like this, like you're the Buddha. You're taking the posture of the Buddha. Sit that way. With that kind of resolve, sit the way the Buddha did over those days and nights. And feel your way into this immovable posture. So as you sit here, you're just also, we're going to start imagining that we're just reclaiming the parts of the body that have been usurped by the dominant culture. Right? So just envision that your expressions, your mannerisms, the way you move and speak and listen, the way you walk, the way you lie down and eat, the shape of your body are all yours, and yours alone. You reclaim that. And you reclaim all of your sensitivities and the way that you rest, the way that you arrive, the way that you work, the way that you create and sing and laugh and dance and breathe and hold and cry and pray and make love, all of it, every last ounce of it, reclaim it all. And let it flood your entire body, your entire being. And just feel yourself filled up with you. Just be full of you. And as we reclaim these aspects of our body, we can also imagine that we're also reclaiming aspects of the collective body that have been domineered and controlled by supremacy culture. And so now we can feel all of us and all of the collective body and the earth in a state of health and wholeness, vitality, and liberation. All right. Next, Gina.
I don't know. You got me a little choked up here. I don't know if I can just keep going. That was so powerful. I'm thinking of, when I started consciously moving to reclaim my body, like just standing in the sun, listening to music and allowing my body to move in public as a way of like reclamation. And, for those of us who come from psychology backgrounds, we know how important moving is for working through trauma, and we have all collectively been traumatized. And so to reclaim our bodies and to reclaim the way that our bodies move through space, especially when we've been told our bodies, when historically our bodies have been taken from us. Historically, our bodies, we've been objectified. It's just, so lots going on. So I'm going to slowly move through some notes about we reclaim our bodies and we reclaim our minds. And so part of today's gesture of, retelling the story of the Buddha's enlightenment from kind of a Black perspective is that we were not told that we could have any investment in these teachings. It's been slowly, more and more teachers have come to say, there's a place for you too in this conversation. There's a place for you too in this liberation. And I am still just coming to understand moment by moment how powerful it has been to be educated in a society that told me, oh, here come the feelings, that I did not exist, that I had no right to so much, specifically education. Can you imagine going to school every day, singing the national anthem, not really realizing what you were celebrating? Can you imagine going to school every day, pledging allegiance to a flag, to a country that was continuing to educate you that you had one history, which was that you were property that was used in order to. You were an object, not a subject. So our minds, and that didn't just happen to me, it happened to everyone. We were all miseducated. And we are all living through that and re-educating ourselves. So what I thought my mind was capable of was a fingernail shaving of what my mind is capable of. What I thought my spirit was capable of, I can't even a mustard seed of what I'm actually capable of. So liberation, Ramon and I have been teaching Afrofuturism together, and towards the end, we'll drop a link because we're going to teach 2 weekends of this. Hopefully Carla will come in as well in Black Futures Month in February. But in that course, I've been thinking about the power of the imagination, and that reclaiming my imagination, which I was doing my whole life. I mean, how could any of us survive if it weren't, especially Black people in the United States, if it weren't for the power of our imagination to take us and through time, to help us to time travel, to help us to see what was what the Black history of slavery is, the technology that slaves were using that whole time to communicate, to practice their own spiritual practices, to do things right in the face of slave masters that slave masters could not perceive. So to reimagine my history and to reimagine my future. Afrofuturism, a body of work that came to be because dominant culture wasn't putting Black people in the future at all. We had no future in the dominant consciousness. So to use our imaginations to create the future before it exists, to sense into the future, it is here in the intangible, to travel between realms, to see our progeny before they've come to be. That is the Underground Railroad. That is what gets us from here to collective liberation, is to reclaim our minds and our spirits. So also one of the things I love is to think of us as having superpowers. So scientifically, epigenetics it's been proven that in our life code, we have inherited things from our ancestors, and that those that come after us will inherit whatever it is we choose to do to create new neuroplasticity, new ways that our minds work. We can pass on resilience. We can pass on spiritual practices in the DNA, in the life code of those that come after us. So, what kind of future are we imagining? What does collective liberation look like? Sometimes I find myself saying things like dominant culture coming out of my mouth. Well, what will we do without police? What would we do if we didn't have prisons? How would everything function if we didn't do it the way it's being done now? Well, somebody thought of that. Somebody imagined the prison system. And we can unimagine. We can imagine a different way of working with those members of our communities who have made mistakes. We can imagine a different way of educating people. I'm really slow in some ways. And it just occurred to me, the ideas that like my whole life I was taught how to get a seat at the table. Like, you need to get a seat at the table and you need to get the microphone and you need to make sure that people hear what you have to say. No one ever taught me to question whether I even wanted a seat at that damn table. Whose table is that? I don't even know if I want to sit there, but I didn't know that can I build my own table? Is there someplace else that I could sit? I was just never even taught to question things like integration, that it was a good thing for Black people to go to white schools. I thought that's what I've been fighting for my whole life. And it wasn't until recently that I started to question the whole thing and the damage it did to my psyche and to the psyche of so many of my people, to be brainwashed that there's only one thing to want and there's only one way to get it. And so we as a collective need to reclaim our imaginations and start to actively create something different, to actively have an underground railroad that leads us all to collective liberation. So first, and this is the last thing I'll say before I pass it on the mic, is just to say that like mindfulness, thank God, this is one of the reasons I'm still at Naropa. I didn't know I had a choice about thought. I didn't know that I could distance myself and say, oh, that ticker tape, that's not mine. I don't have to read that script. I can see it and say, oh, that's socialized mind. That's internalized oppression happening there. I don't have to believe any of that. I don't have to live like that. I don't have to move like that. So I'm going to pass the microphone.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Carla. Man, people. So I have to, in the spirit of being current and of being in the moment, I have to say that I'm actually carrying a little bit of a charge from our time here. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take a risk and be real with you all. Part of what we were trying to do is invite you all into a Black cultural space, into a Black mental space, and into a Black perspective on the Dharma teachings. And, not 15 minutes into the presentation, someone felt like they had to verbally interrupt us. And I don't say this to call out any individuals that are on the line. And I'm not trying to single anyone out. But first of all, I feel a bit of a charge with that. And I see part of it's getting worked out in the comment section. But it was interesting just to observe and to witness that within a few minutes, someone said, what is this? This isn't what I asked for. This isn't what I expected. If we had been 3 facilitators of different social locations, if we had been 3 big name facilitators, would that person have felt the freedom, if you want to call it that, to just interrupt right in the middle? So, if you're curious, like, what is this and what is it even happening for? There's a lot of reasons it's happening for, and many of them have been spoken by Regina and Carla. But one of them is those kinds of moments. And I'm not trying to say this to, again, these are collective patterns that affect us in different ways and that for different reasons we all are struggling with. And they create different levels of danger depending on where your social location is. Some people are more the targets of these, and some people are more holding the pistols. But either way, it's dangerous. Okay? And so these are behaviors that we just enact and we fall into unconsciously without checking ourselves, without that mindfulness. And if we're going to run organizations like that, you're going to fund organizations like that, this is part of the awareness that we're trying to bring up. Look at how we actually interact in our organizations. And whose voices does that foster and whose voices does choke? So I feel like I have to say that we evoked the spirit of Black liberation and our ancestors and the people who are out there on the streets or wherever they are doing the work. And then this happens and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. So, and I don't, again, everyone can do their homework. Take a look at these documents if you're curious, if you care to. Take a look at them. Check it out. See if it plays out in your work. See if it plays out in yourself. And honestly, no shame if it does. Because again, this is something that it's a water that we've all swam in. It's an air that we've all breathed. And we're trying to figure out how to be awake in it. And go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that, we talked about maybe having a moment where we could bring in our process. The 3 of us, when we've met, a lot to talk about how we wanted to do this. And we had some forks in the road where we had to choose what path. And it's like we are subject matter experts in the work that we're doing. And we could easily put up different PowerPoints that walk you through what white supremacist culture is and the four eyes of oppression and all the different ways that you can look at power dynamics and racism. And we could have geared this presentation to educating white people about whiteness. And we made different choices because that's not liberation. That is not our liberation. So we chose to do it in our cultural style.
Mm.
So everything we did was a conscious choice, from
Mm.
music to movement to conversation to call and response to improvisation. Everything was grounded. And so I just wanted to offer that it was all a teaching. It is all a teaching. You know, I was thinking about the Great Stupa of Dharmakaya, which is, I see when I go to Shambhala Mountain Center, and I was always like, which liberates upon seeing, and it took me a while. And then I also thought, like, what we're trying to do is liberate upon being. Like, can we be completely us? And can that be liberation for others? You know, Carlos said, I
Yes.
want to have a conversation where we're not talking about oppression because we're just being. So I just wanted to drop that in.
Mhm. And this is all connected. I mean, this story, this moment of the Buddhist enlightenment has caught the attention of a lot of Black Buddhist practitioners. It's caught the attention, because again, another thing here is how do the teachings land in different cultural contexts as well as personal contexts, right? And there's so many things that try to tempt us to be other than what we are. You'll look prettier if you do this. You'll be smarter if you think you know this. How dare you? And we've gotten to this point where white supremacy is an unconscious cultural pattern and behavioral pattern. But it goes back to the fact that people were separated from their land. People were snatched from one part of the earth and brought to another. People were in this part of the earth and they were moved out for another people to inhabit this place. So, when we talk about touching the earth, what are we really talking about? When we talk about you don't have the credentials to say what you're saying, what are we really talking about? So what did the Buddha do? He was like, I don't need the credentials. He just reached down. So as a close, and at that point we can open it up for discussion. We do so much of it here. We do so much as talking heads. It's safe here. So we're gonna invite you all. You can stand up and come out of your seat or however you do it. We're gonna invite you all with us. Each one of us is gonna reach down and we're gonna touch the earth. Okay? So I'm gonna stay in my seat just to remain visible, but you're welcome to do it in any way that works for you. So let's lean over and let's put our hands on the earth. Come down here. And as the flat of your palm touches the earth, think about the first peoples that walked this earth, wherever you're at. Here it's the Arapaho and the Cheyenne. And think about all those people that came before. Think about, bring to your mind that
the joy, the sorrow, the suffering that took place wherever you are. And think about this old, old earth and how much is witnessed, how many waves of life have come out of it and gone back into it. Think about the earth in your own bones, in your own blood, and all the people made of earth that sacrificed and celebrated to make you possible. So when those Mars tempt you, and they'll come over and over and over, you keep your feet on the ground, you reach out, and you know the earth has your back. You're enough just because you exist. The earth is your witness. All right, let's take a deep breath in and out together. Breathe out earth out through your hand, and out through your mouth. And we'll come back up to the screen. And then the conversation with one another.
So we have about 10 minutes, a little over 10 minutes actually, for questions or comments, whether they're in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself. Yeah, we got a little time.
I had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see you guys are really, I put in the chat session, very gutsy and intense, and speaking your truth, which is great to see. And I was just curious, as somebody who's worked with Dr. Frederick Lenz when he was alive, I was just curious, I hope it's not too much off subject. I feel some of that intensity has to do with, from many sources, but I was just curious if, from a Black perspective, or from your perspective, your feelings about Dr. Dr. Frederick Lenz, your exposure to his teachings, does that come into play at all in part of what you're doing today, or in other things you're doing in your life? But I was just curious about from the Black perspective that you're representing here, today. Because the search for freedom and the rebelliousness, all these things I see. I'm sort of like an elder with maybe questionable wisdom, but I'm coming from the point of view as an elder looking. I see the younger people with this, and I like what I see. You guys are, things that that my own teacher taught us, and things that I have gone through myself as a teacher and so on as a human being. Certain things that might be associated with Dr. Frederick Lenz. I'm just curious about that.
So to be transparent, I don't know much about Dr. Lenz's teachings. I was asked, on behalf of Naropa to offer something that is responsive to the Black Lives Matter movement and to organizations that might be looking for ways to be more activist in nature. And so even though Naropa has a longstanding relationship with the Lenz Foundation and they've made amazing things possible at Naropa, I am more familiar with the fellows that they've funded, the programs that they've offered, the way that they've enriched our community than I am with the core teachings of Dr. Lenz. But I'm open to learning.
Oh, oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious about that from each of, I don't want to take too much more time, from Ramon, and also, I don't see her now on the screen. But I appreciate your answer. I don't want to take any more time actually, because we're running out of time. But you guys are really, I like what you're doing. You know, you're definitely unique and definitely going for it. So it's good to see.
How do we raise our hands?
Got it.
We just speak and
That
say
works. That
good
sounds good.
afternoon. Thank
Yes.
you. I want to thank you, and I'll thank my friend Dara who invited me to join you. And for those who did have the issue of, oh, this isn't what I expected, I think part of the issue with diversity is learning to not expect, but being open and accepting what is. And that's not just for dealing with Blacks or people of color, that's for dealing with anybody. And so I want to commend you guys. And Ramon, yes, it was important to share what you shared, because it's very important to realize that these dynamics are present even within people of goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
And this is key for all of us to understand. It's not the red states, the blue states, the enlightened, the not woke, the woke. It's everybody has their implicit biases. Do not think that for one moment, me who has done diversity work was not ready for you guys to jump into that discussion the way I wanted it to be jumped into. But I quelled my, what is this about, to say, what can I learn from this story? Well, this is a lovely poetry that they're doing. And there's an analogy. Oh, you're making me stretch my brain. You're making me stop and think.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the seeking of, I'm working on a book and I have a course where that's called TMI, too much information. You must have a quest for too much information. You must have an interest and a desire to learn what the other person is saying and what it might mean about them and what it might mean about you and what it might mean about the world. And so thank you for doing it from a different perspective and not just saying we have suffered under slavery and we have suffered under that's the usual suspects.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to talk about the usual suspects. We need to talk about the implicit suspects that are in our own heads. And each of us have them. Each of them. I was sitting here, oh boy, they're going to go on and on. What are they doing? This is one of Dare's namby-pamby, touchy-feely. Give me the goods. No. You gave me the goods and made me have to stop and think. And then you put it to us to stop and feel. The urgency of now that we have to have the answer, to come up with the right answer, to give the formula, it's not important. It's the journey in, the thinking slow versus thinking fast. The Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, I give you guys that book to look at too. And then also, we got to be careful. No offense meant to, who was it that said he was an elder, Jeff? He was right in sharing his thoughts and questions, but we also have to be careful with being intellectually elitist about what we share with everybody, because it's one of those things that you want to ask those questions and know where people are coming from, but you don't want to shame people where they might not know what you're talking about, or they might not have been exposed, or have the whole group closed mind. So I guess the thought is, and I'm rambling, just having open minds, open hearts, open ears, and trying to do that without judging either yourself for reacting in any way or the person for speaking in whatever way. Just learning to realize what is. I'll be done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And I do want to just go on.
If we still have time, if not, I can ask in the chat. Okay.
We have time for like one or two more.
Okay. My name's Kim Aranda. I'm with the Flourish Foundation. I actually feel really emotional about everything that you shared,
Understood.
but I also feel really passionate about wanting to speak to everyone who's here. I'm 21 years old, and my parents migrated to the States from Peru, and I was born here. So I am Peruvian American. I am not Black. I'm a person of color,
Mm-hmm.
and I live in a primarily white community.
Mm-hmm.
I now attend a college, Middlebury College, that's also primarily white and
Mm-hmm.
rich and privileged. And I can say this is really like an officially like the first time I've encountered this sort of gathering where people have told me that it's okay to feel comfortable in my body.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's really empowering for me. I think like someone who's a woman that's been harmed by many things as I've grown up,
Mm-hmm.
from my family to like people around me, I still have a really difficult time feeling comfortable with myself. I don't feel comfortable in the Peruvian community because I was born here and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
seen as someone who is actually Latina or from Peru. And I also don't feel American because I'm not white.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've laughed, I've cried, I've
Mm.
felt confused during this whole like gathering, and I don't even really know like what was like the end purpose or if there was supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
one. But however I got to this place to like
Mm-hmm.
share this moment with like my coworkers at Flourish,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to be like talking about this with the people around me that feel like me. And thank you for sharing the documents that you did. Thank you for sharing the presentations, because I think people in my situation want to talk about these things, but we don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I gathered from this. So that's all I really wanted to say. I really appreciate like what you, Carla, Regina, and Ramon have shared with us today.
Thank you. And I just want to say that this moment that you just shared with us, for me, that was the end purpose. That was the end purpose for me.
And I think Frederick Lenz, this is Dara from Insight. The Frederick Lenz believed in all people and all things, because that is the Buddhist way, is that every little thing, every little molecule, every person, everything is part of this universe, is significant and will become a Buddha. So those that don't feel that way, that don't feel they're part of that whole system of life, that is why we had this type of event today, to include everyone. Thank you.
Awesome. So I just dropped into the chat the Black Futures Month classes that we teach at Naropa. There will be 2 in February, open to the public. Please go to the Sway. There's a link for registration in there. Also, we'll put our email addresses into the chat, or some of us will. I'm not going to force my colleagues to do it. And yeah, before we pass the microphone to, I believe, Susan, let us do some, after the Buddha touched the earth and was enlightened, there was an important piece that really is why we're also here, which is the vow to liberate all sentient beings and to come back as often as is needed until we are all free. And so I'm going to pass the mic to Carla and Ramon to say a little bit on that, and then we'll dedicate the merit of this time. We have a minute before we need to collectively pass the mic.
Okay, thank you, Regina. Thank you for everyone, what you shared. And yes, in the spirit of passing forward what we've received, these moments of liberation, even if it's just moments, that we could collect them and that we could send them back out to the earth and to other beings who are not experiencing any sort of sense of being able to be who they are, liberated, and in any way having conversations like this that somehow everything that we do could be of benefit to all beings. And so we just make that intention for what we've gathered, for what we've done here, anything good, that we share it, that we spread it, and that we give gratitude.
And there's a saying in a lot of Black freedom struggles, and it's spread, and I'm not even sure it originated there, but here's the saying: no one is free while others are oppressed. And if there's a bodhisattva vow in the modern era, there it is. So we invite you all and all of us to strive to grow to meet that in big, little, small ways. And we give thanks to all of those ancestors that in their own ways embodied the Bodhisattva spirit, that were present with us on the line. We give thanks to all those living people who, to the best of their ability, are trying to embody that Bodhisattva spirit. And we ask that as this call disbands, that we all go back into our lives, that we all feel the comfort and the power and the beauty of our own skin, our own bodies, and that we take that power and that comfort and we dedicate it to the quelling of suffering. Amen. Ashe. Thank you.
Over to Susan Shea.
Thanks, everyone. I'm so touched by this gathering and by the beautiful presentation that you did that felt like a transmission of openness and of hosting diversity in such a beautiful and heartfelt way. I felt really included, and I also learned a lot. So thank you for that brilliant presentation. I have the honor to just say a few words about the upcoming Lens Conference, which is actually not happening for a little while, but that gives us an opportunity to do more things like what we did today, to dive into some of the really important topics that are current for American Buddhists all over the world. So, but particularly in America, which is what the Lens Foundation funds. So I just wanted to share my screen really briefly here, and also to invite my colleague, Judith Simmer-Brown, to jump in. She's the faculty liaison for the conference, and we've been working on it actually for quite a while, but then COVID hit. So I think our presentation today was all about the future of American Buddhism. And what we're planning is a virtual dialogue and also an in-person gathering in 2022 to explore where we're going and to co-create our future together. So we have, sorry, I'm just going to move to my slideshow version. So we have 6 topics. The first is tradition and innovation. How can Buddhism innovate in an American context without losing connection with its Asian roots? Number 2, women's empowerment and leadership. How are American Buddhist communities addressing patriarchy and sexual abuse while ensuring that women are leaders and teachers? Dharma for the environmental crisis, which we touched on a little bit today. How is American Buddhism contributing to solving these critical environmental issues? Next, engaged Buddhism. What are some examples of projects that are using contemplative methods? And then awakening to power and privilege. So much of the themes of what we heard today. How is American Buddhism addressing structural racism? And then finally, digital Dharma, what new platforms and venues are propagating Dharma? So these are just some of the themes that came out of a survey that we did with Lens grantees. And new themes could emerge over the next year. But what we have planned for 2022 is that we're going to do a really cool webinar on these 6 topics. And this will be stretched out over 6 weeks in early 2022, where we'll focus on each one, and then we'll create communities of practice around these different topics. So that'll take place in March and May. And then in June, we'll come together for a 3.5-day conference at Garrison Institute in New York. So that's just a little preview of things to come. Save the date for June 2 through 5. I know that's a long ways off, but what the heck? We're living in it now, and we can start living into our future, and we'll just keep doing it and then bring the fruit of all of that together. So Judith, would you like to add anything to this very short presentation?
Thank you, Susan. And the only thing that I would say is the idea for this conference came from you, the Lens grantees, from the survey that we sent. And we're very aware that in these intense times, those issues may be switching in priority and orientation as we look ahead. So we have a kind of process going from now until the Garrison Conference. If you know of other issues that we should be emphasizing and putting attention to, please let us know. 1/7 issue we thought was money, how Dharma communities in America are supporting themselves and how they are able to take part in American society that is so capitalist oriented. But we'll leave it to you. We'd love to hear from you if you have ideas about our conference, and we'll be sending you more information to come. Thanks so much for coming today. And I'm blown away by my Naropa colleagues and so proud of the beautiful job you did in bringing us into a different space of thinking and perceiving of all of the perspectives of being Black and being Buddhist. Thanks so much.
All right, well, that wraps it up. I'll play some exit music. Feel free to get our emails from the chat. Feel free to chat us. We'll stay on as people exit, and have a glorious Sunday.
Wow.